good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world. It is your Lore Saviour, and very recently I have been thinking about my development and my journey through the TTRPG sphere and hobby. But what I mean by development, well, I feel, and it's something I have exercised on a few occasions, that becoming part of the TTRPG sphere and hobby space, I feel it has made me a more developed and better understanding of an individual, and it's also helped me to better understand myself, or rather come to terms that there are certain parts of myself that I should be more proud of. I am specifically referring to the fact that I am bisexual, and I came out on the 1st of June 2021, I believe. 2021, yes, that's it, which was the first day of Pride Month. And I was very much in a good place to do that publicly, i.e. I'm acknowledging that I'm somewhat privileged to be able to do that and have a good network of friends to talk to and bounce things off of ideas and whatnot. And I'm very grateful that I had a supportive family to do that as well, although I'm kind of half convinced that my mother still thinks it's some sort of phase, but that is a conversation for a different time. For the various points in my education, I had what I'm going to define as internal flights of fancy, by which I mean I had gay thoughts quite frequently, and I often put this down to a phase, which is laughable now, but that's kind of what I was led to believe at the time, and I just felt that it was very much wrong of me to feel these things. My secondary school, or high school in the UK, well, secondary school is a UK term anyway, but I'm getting off topic, and for America, for which most of my audience is, secondary school is akin to your middle school. My secondary school was an all-boy private Catholic school, so a disaster won't ever happen if I ever decided to just tell anybody or even inquire with anybody, even friends of mine, hey, I may just be a little bit gay. Half a faggot, you may word it as, if you just be a bit weird about it, you know? But I just put this down as a phase. I'd grow out of it. It's like, oh, no, definitely not. It was only with my first partner that I found in 2020, and I was sharing some of these thoughts with, and they just sort of laughed, said, Lore, you're bisexual, mate, innit? They didn't say that because they weren't British, innit? So you get what I'm trying to say here. And even before this sort of coming of acceptance sort of thing, with this partner and then beyond, I have always done my absolute hardest to be understanding and accommodating to queer people, right? I knew that gay people existed, I knew that lesbians existed, I knew things about bisexuality, and I knew that trans people existed as well. I didn't know a lot about any of these things because I didn't really have to interact with any of it in my life. I didn't have much of a social life as a kid. Surprise, surprise, I didn't have many friends. I'd say I had a handful of acquaintances, but I didn't really interact much beyond what was immediately in front of me. I didn't use social media all that much growing up as a kid. I didn't use the internet all that much growing up as a kid. I, at the time, didn't really need to. I was quite fine playing video games and doing a shitload of reading. So I wasn't exposed to these things, but as I said, I knew these things existed. I don't think I was a particularly racist person as a kid. But of course, I went to, as I said, all white, mostly white, private Catholic school, and there were certain prejudices that I knew that wouldn't affect me. Not that I would word it as such then, because I don't think I was aware of the word prejudice during my teen years. Or rather, I did, but didn't use it all that much, you know? So, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm just trying to acknowledge that whilst I, as a disabled man, have things particularly badly at times, there's some other issues that I'm never really going to experience, but I can at least sympathise and empathise with. To an extent, I have to emphasise that point. And it's really through becoming a content creator in the TTRPG sphere and trying to find people to play and run games for, both as a content creator and just as, you know, average Joe sort of thing, not that there's anything average about me. It's that I've opened my mind and my understanding about so many different social and political issues, far more so than I ever did as a teen and a kid growing up. And I did read the news, I did check out things here and there, but not as much as I probably should have. But then again, what fucking kid and teen spends a lot of time reading the news, you know? And this is like back in the infancy of the internet and social media, where things weren't as varied and as dire as they are now. So my sources, I suppose, were not as varied or perhaps as engaging as they were now. But then again, I don't really know, because I didn't really participate in internet social culture then, so I might as well just be chatting right out my asshole. Anyway, I'm sort of getting off topic a little bit here. Like, becoming part of the TTRPG sphere and forming my own little community and meeting up with friends and being with my amazing partner, I've understood so much, a lot more about queer issues and problems and strifes of it all. I'm able to relate to a lot more people than I've ever done before. I understand a lot more about trans issues and the various umbrella terms about like that. Like, I will never feel the dysphoria of feeling that I'm in the wrong body or having the wrong gender assigned to me. But I don't really need to. I just need to appreciate and respect that some people feel like that, and as long as they're not hurting anybody else, they can do whatever the fuck they want, which is all that it should be, really. So it doesn't matter what pronouns they fucking use or any at all, or they may change their minds one day, which from my perspective may come across as seemingly random, but to the other person involved it's required a lot of thought, processing and emotional strife. So it doesn't take much to be accepting, and I feel that engaging with the TTRPG sphere and seeing how diverse things are, I have become a far more accepting person than I was before, just because I now have the knowledge to appreciate and respect it beyond the very basic minimum sub-level of people can do whatever the fuck they want provided they're not hurting each other, you know? Of course, it's not just queer things that I feel better equipped regarding my knowledge and understanding. It's a whole variety of things regarding race and minority groups. Learn more about disability, because despite being disabled myself, living in a disabled household and having been quite accustomed to seeing a lot of disabled people in my lifetime through my own experiences and the experiences of my family, those are still those specific takes, and there's a lot more things regarding language and lifestyle that I've learned about mixing and talking with some really amazing people online, which is just fantastic stuff, I feel. Now, this wouldn't be a video of mine if it was just praise about some level of cynicism or critique now, would it? And so this isn't just a case of like bloating my ego, because I know that I ain't perfect and there's a lot more that I could do to be a better person. And I think the same can be said with everyone else. And I'm not doing this like a preachy sort of like, stop being a right-wing fascist arsehole, because that should just be a given personally from all the other fucking things I ramble on about on this channel. But Pride Month, June, there were a handful of Pride-focused TTRPG actual plays for charity events surrounding Pride, which is fantastic. June 10th and a bit before and a bit after that, I had one that focused on people of colour, which again is super important, and I think it's really awesome that we now are putting forward those spaces and making people aware that these issues are ongoing and how important they are to our society and culture and how it affects everything else around it. That is awesome. But none of you did anything about Disability Pride Month. I bet none of you even know what month that is. July. I'm recording this at the end of July 2025 in the year of our Lord Talos, and I've seen fuck all. I've seen a couple of posts about people fucking pleading for money because they are struggling to survive, to which I threw a coin here and there. Not a literal coin, but you get what I mean. Autism Awareness Month was in April. I did a post about that, and whilst a lot of you were very supportive, a lot of you were just fucking ableist because I talked about some very specific issues regarding noise and sensitivities. Some of you took the piss in the form of like, oh, you have to put with so much noise, or you're such a brave trooper. Go fuck yourself. And your mum. You fucking cunt. Like, the point is that we seem to hyper-focus on very specific groups for inclusivity merit. And we all joke about like companies like changing their logo to the Pride Month just to like do the little checklist for the liberal perpetually onlines out there. But that didn't happen too much this year because Trump's further assertion in the fascist field, as it were, because we do like a bit of alliteration here, and companies were a bit scared. And I take my hat off to those who actually stuck through with it, because that shows fucking courage that you're not prepared to back down in the face of fucking fascism. And just being more tolerant of trolls, because that's what a lot of it would be in the end of the day. People complaining in the comment section and perhaps harassing staff members in DMs and whatnot, doing this, that and the other, which is unpleasant, don't get me wrong, I've been on the receiving end of that far too many times. But what the fuck are they going to do really? I mean, there's some extreme cases, yes, And I know this is a very serious issue, and I don't want to trivialise things too much. But the bare basic level for companies to show that they are accepting and diverse, many backed down when it really fucking mattered. Pride Month. Why is it, as TTRPG creatives, actual play performers, however it is that you want to brand yourself as an influencer, only choose those specific instances to hold those specific events, revolving a cast of people of colour, Asians, queer, but no one's prepared to do anything with the disabled or the autistic? I have my theories about this, but you're not going to like them very much, and I feel just the very topic of this video is going to cause enough trouble, and me wanting to suggest what I want to suggest is probably going to get me into a lot more trouble, but we can apply our brains and think what I think on that matter. And I put out my hand here, I could be doing a lot more too. Yeah, I donate to charity every so often. I don't make a huge song and dance out of it, because I've always been a bit suspicious regarding people who make their entire personality being cuddly, friendly, go happy, lucky sort of thing, doing charity thing after charity thing after charity thing, constantly making a thing about them, really. There's a few infamous examples in the UK where you have some really devious criminals who have put up a front, as it were, and my mind is always thinking of those sorts of people. So basically, I'm being incredibly judgmental and saying that such individuals are probably hiding something, but then again, I have very much a negative bias on this and a very cynical individual. And just going back to my main point, there's a lot more that we could be doing to be inclusive, which then touches upon the other spicy take, that I think that we should be properly broaching painful and hurtful subjects in life and be expressing them in our games. Because TTRPGs are hella creative. I'd be arguing to say that to an extent, actual plays and performing in a more casual setting as a TTRPG is a form of art form. It's collaborative storytelling. You're creating memories that are up for interpretation. And I feel so many of us are missing the opportunity for one reason or another. Now, the reasons for not including such darker topics and more politically poignant, for lack of a better phrase, are as varied as they are nuanced. A lot of them affect people right now, ongoing, rather than a detached trauma thing. And even so, with the nature of trauma, like having to move on as quickly and as smoothly as the brain will allow, it's physically and mentally and emotionally difficult for people to confront those aspects in a setting like that, especially if they have no means of preparing themselves for it. And there's also the fact that some people may not be able to physically explore those themes in the present. Because if it's an actual play, for example, and it's streamed out to the world to see, a family member might find out about something and then cause said individual a lot of shit. Or they may be living with said people and are unable to vocalise those feelings, even if they're pretending to be somebody else. Like to play a character, like, oh, we're going to play something like that, you could be anything else you want. It may be dangerous for them for that reason alone. And I appreciate and I understand that. But I do also think that a fair amount of it comes down to the fact that if we put something as spicy as this online, we're going to get judged heavily because it's a controversial thing. Especially if a games master attempts to do something well and they miss a point or they don't understand or it just goes wrong someplace somehow, they're going to be branded online as a hateful, spiteful person. And it's something that I worried about. It's actually something that I ranted about earlier this year. It's going to appear in a video somewhere now. And I just find that particularly frustrating that, regardless of the context, regardless of what the players feel about the games master, that everybody agreed to it sort of thing, it just takes one outside viewer to think, I don't like that, let's go and complain about it online sort of thing. Like, it shouldn't be this way. Like, TTRPGs are designed to explore all sorts of topics and subject matters. Dark, light-hearted, and all the varieties in between. And again, I understand that people may not be physically able to explore those for one reason or another. So I'm not talking to you lot. Although, that being said, you could make the argument that TTRPGs are a form of therapy. So in the right group or setting, you may be able to find the means of exploring that. But again, the reasons to and not to explore things are as heavily nuanced as they are varied. But I'm speaking mostly to those who are choosing not to because it makes them look bad. To which I say, I think it's much better to make an effort to try and understand something and to make players, and in the case of an actual play, viewers feel that you are attempting to understand and feel something that's going on in a lot of people's lives right now. They're not trying at all because you're trying to not get into trouble and fear of making mistakes. And I get it, I'm fearful of making mistakes, but I always do attempt to try something and to understand something. But we should be exploring these things a lot more, because some of our favourite games, books, films and stories have some deplorable shit in them. And I understand that it can be difficult to explore some of those really dark, deplorable themes, even if it's inferred. But just think of what that can do for the characters and their journeys, their emotions, their expressions, how it can change and develop them. Again, exercise with caution, depending on the group and how you wish to put things. But I feel regarding certain issues regarding fascism and queerness, that we are just sort of like more or less queer baiting, because in my experience, the TTRPGs that focus around queerness, or sorry, rather the TTRPG actual plays that are focused around them, is just limited to the characters or NPCs having a variance of they them pronouns and being childishly horny, which I find a little insulting and doesn't really do much to educate or celebrate this, other than the fact that queer people are known for being more sexually open to ideas, I guess. I'm not struggling to find the right word here, so I'm sorry if I'm being a bit crass here, but I just think that we could do a lot better of treating it as like a thing that millions, perhaps even billions of people live with and struggle with, rather than just be fucking immature about it. And similar things can be said about the handling of treating of racism and fascism in games, and I know that as a British white man, out of context, that might seem a little bit spicy, but hear me out for a moment. So often I hear, and you've probably heard this too, a regular player or a TTRPG performer, and in my case, some fucking authors, who will merrily say with childish glee, oh, I'll have Nazis in games providing I can punch them. And it's like, are we still treating Nazis as like a laughable, like, grunt of like Wolfenstein proportion? Because that seemed like a ridiculous idea once, that Nazis would be so prevalent in our society that you have resistance fighters taking them out, and it's like, fucking wake up and look at the world around you. It's happening. We have fucking Nazis in power across the world, and we are still treating them as like a punchable enemy, and we're not going to provide the nuance that fascism doesn't just happen in people. I abhor fascism, but I can at least have the empathy to know that it grooms people, it twists people, that people are educated into this mindset, and there are a whole host of nuanced reasons for this. And I'm actually going to include an example where I talked about this in great detail. It's from my review of Necropolis Atlanta, which is a Wraith the Oblivion source book, also doubles as a Vampire the Masquerade City by Night book, which focuses around the city of Atlanta in Georgia, and it talks about the Civil War, it talks about the KKK, and there's a large faction of Wraiths in that setting that they're basically the KKK. They go by a different name and slightly different ideologies, but it's essentially fucking fascism. They all wear different clothes and do different salutes and whatever, but they are fascists, and you have government members of that Wraith society who are sympathisers and members of the fucking KKK here. So rather than try and like paraphrase shit that I said now, I might as well just fucking show you the whole fucking thing now.
The faction this review will focus primarily on is, of course, the Sons of the Imperial Dragon, which includes only 3 official members for us to explore in the book. This is clearly very deliberate and makes the point that fascism and racism are learnt inherited traits, not ones we are born with. The first is Albert Watts, who only acted in a politically correct way because that was what his wife expected of him, when he and his wife were mugged by a group of Hispanic thieves, leading to his death when he tried to save her. The mask he put on disappeared, and he joined the Sons when approached, his hatred fueling him. Keith Forsyth grew up in a rural white community that all hated black people, following a family tradition of becoming a member of the KKK, and was killed in prison for angering the wrong black guy, Jude Henderson, a member of the Shattered Chains, who hates white people. Finally, there is Vad Weideman, who blames black people for his own selfish and envious wrongdoings, and only joins the Dragon Sons because, and I quote, they accept him and they skewed his views of the events that led to his death. This trio of characters demonstrates how deeply personal grievances, societal conditioning, and twisted narratives can coalesce into a dangerous ideology, painting a chilling picture of how hatred and bigotry take root. Albert White exemplifies how a veneer of political correctness can mask deep-seated prejudices, only to have them surface when faced with tragedy. His story highlights the fragility of learned tolerance when it is not genuinely internalized. Keith Forsyth, on the other hand, reveals how systematic racism and generational hatred are perpetuated through insular communities, where bigotry becomes a rite of passage rather than a conscious choice. His ultimate fate underscores the destructive cycle of violence that such ideologies perpetuate. Vad Weideman's journey is perhaps the most tragic, as his hatred stems from a refusal to take responsibility for his own failures, instead blaming others to justify his bitterness. Together, these characters reflect their ways in which personal failings and societal pressures can merge into toxic ideologies, illustrating how fascism and racism are not innate but are cultivated through environment, fear, and unchecked anger.
I can also understand people who are World of Darkness / White Wolf fans having a look at material like that and thinking, oh god, it's White Wolf, they put the Nazis in the game, stay away, I'll make them playable. But as you've just heard, it does not focus on making them playable at all. They are villains. And you could argue that you could play as somebody of that faction who may be wanting to get out, or you roleplay through the process of breaking free from those fascist chains. I know plenty of people who have been brought up in those sorts of environments, and I know a couple of them have actually played character concepts like this. One of them was in a LARP situation, if I recall correctly, but there isn't a bad subject to approach in any game, really. It just requires a certain level of maturity and finesse to get right. And talking about White Wolf and Wraith for a moment, there is the book, The Shire, the China Houses of Europe, that talks about the Holocaust surrounding the World of Darkness. It retcons that it was the vampires that controlled fucking World War II. It's very blunt and honest about its fucking atrocities, how it wasn't just the Jews that the Holocaust affected. It started with the Asians, the Roma folk, the disabled were the very first of them all. People, again, tend to forget that the disabled were so heavily affected by this as well, but that's a conversation for a different time. And it's very blunt and honest about all these things, and its NPCs, the Jewish characters, are not all good people. Some of them are dickheads, but you have to put into the nuance that it was survival of the fittest, and if you weren't prepared to put yourself fucking first, you were going to die in those situations. And I'm really glad that White Wolf fucking addressed that. Granted, it's not perfect, because you've got some characters that basically have a crude caricature of Anne Frank, which is not the best decision in the world, and it's arguably a very difficult book to use in a role-playing setting, partly because it's Wraith the fucking Oblivion, and 3 people play that game on a regular basis. But when I put out my review of that book, I have comments in that have people that have used that book as an educational tool, which I think is such a beautiful thing. It is not, as this dickhead put it, a concentration camp role-playing game. You stupid fuck. Ugh, that really fucking annoys me. And the amount of views that got as well. Oh, it's just... Talk about not reading the fucking book correctly. But hey, talking about the book fairly with a decent title doesn't do it justice than a fucking clickbait title, does it now, my friends? What I'm saying is, overall, is that I think from time to time we would all benefit from making our games a tad bit more realistic and a bit more engaging and interesting and emotionally satisfying at the end of the day by having some of these more mature conversations and ideas thrown about in our games. So maybe from time to time throw in some of those religious prejudices against queer communities, right? Maybe explore disability properly, by which I mean that you don't have like a character who is blind or they're missing a limb and just leave it at that. Have a look at the game's mechanics and to see if there's anything in like a flaw or system like that can deal with that. Because going with Vampire the Masquerade's 20th Anniversary Edition, I see quite a few people complaining about the number of merits and flaws that are available in that book, and yeah, admittedly, there's quite a lot in there, and it can be very overwhelming sometimes, especially when people forget that they're actually optional and you don't have to include any at all. But I often see people complaining about, oh, you don't need a floor to wear glasses, or you don't need a floor to be... It's just stuff like that. And whilst I agree with that to an extent, I think it makes the role-playing experience a bit better if there is a mechanic that further affirms your condition on your plight, providing that it is done respectfully. And if you look at something that does exist and think, oh, I don't like this, isn't wholly accurate, I'm going to make these little tweaks, do so. Because now it reinforces your character concept with rules and mechanics rather than just a bit of fiction that could be forgotten about. Granted, the inclusion of a flaw on a part of a character sheet, like say on the other side of a bit of paper, might be forgotten about because, you know, out of sight, out of mind sort of thing. But I'll guarantee you that it should be a bit more difficult to forget that sort of thing. It's also very important to highlight, and I cannot believe that I forgot to mention this, but perhaps I just presumed that people would know better, is that if you are portraying disability and or mental illness, you must do your research and, like, if you can, ask people, you know, just to find out how they live with whatever conditions that you are wanting to portray, because it's not something that people can just turn off and on. You know, it's a part of them, it's a core part of their identity. Like with me and my autism, like I can't turn that fucking shit off. Like, and it's not like a case of I slipped on a banana peel and like woke up with a case of autism. Like, that is who I am. That cannot be changed. Like, everything I do is influenced by the fact that I see and perceive the world differently, because I'm autistic, and people with disabilities and varying levels of mental health to some degree are the same as well, because, you know, different strokes, different folks sort of things. There's a huge wide variety and nuances to be found with all these different things, and I know there's some people that are going to complain about this, so I'm just going to jump at the opportunity and address this here. Wheelchairs in TTRPGs and disabilities is not stupid. It's not something to scoff at, it's not something to infantilize, even though I know there's a few people that think that the likes of the combat wheelchair do this, and whilst I can understand that there are some of you who think it sort of undermines some really serious issues, it's just a matter of perspective, I feel, and I've touched about this before in a video regarding Wealth the Apocalypse that's going to be on the card somewhere right now, where basically it's a combination of dealing with internalized ableism and the fact that somebody who was born, for example, not being able to use their legs and needs a wheelchair is going to have a harder time to think about what it's like to be normal than it is for somebody who has gained a disability over the portion of their life, or using the previous immediate example, who lost their legs in a previous car accident and have those memories and find it a lot harder to find with those struggles, or somebody that has a disability or a range of disabilities that constantly makes them feel exhausted and tired, and they do want those pains and things to go away. And I can understand that, but we just have to understand there's a bit of nuance here to be found, that not everybody with a disability wants to be cured, and I think that's a very important thing to highlight here. Sure, you can roleplay and portray a character like that, but just think how many villains there are in media and our favourite stories where their basic motivative is that I was made ugly, I'm disabled, therefore everybody must fucking die. You know, it's a bit shit. It's a bit boring. Like, there's a lot more that you could do to, like, overcome things, and overcoming things isn't just, like, curing yourself. It's learning how to work with them and to find a unique way of perceiving and portraying and fighting in the world. Like, I really encourage you to go and look at some wheelchair rugby matches, right? Basically, if there's a sport out there, there's a wheelchair version of it, and more often than not, it's a lot more brutal and contact-heavy than its able-bodied compatriots. I'd encourage you to watch wheelchair dancing. There's an old clip that flies around on my YouTube every so often because I just come back to watch and show it to people, where it's sort of like this Renaissance night fair sort of thing, and there's like a sword fight going on with these two knights, and one of them is got one leg, and he absolutely thrashes the one who is, well, with 2 legs, because he has a very unique fighting style that's, to put it crassly, just sort of like hopping and jumping about a lot more, and it's a little bit unpredictable. And there are loads of examples of history where there are people who've been like this, or people throughout time who have had prosthetics who have survived and they cope with them, and the accommodations that so many different ancient civilizations have made to accommodate for disabled people. There's an older interview on my channel actually where I was talking with Mark Thompson, formerly Sarah Thompson, the author of the combat wheelchair for Dungeons and Dragons, and we talk a lot about that, and that's going to be on a card somewhere now. And I really encourage you to go and watch that and just basically do your research and just remember that aids like wheelchairs, crutches, walking sticks, canes, prosthetics all allow disabled people to access, to the things that other people just sort of take for granted, really. And like, I do find it a bit weird that this attitude that we should get rid of disabilities, that we should cure people who are disabled all the time and make them right is, kind of borderlines a eugenics thing. That we have this attitude with people, but when we put a little dog with a limp leg in a wheelchair, we just think, oh, it's amazing, they can go and walk and they have so much fun. It's the same sort of fucking attitude, people. Like, come on. We can do better than this. So, just try it. Just bits and pieces. Be the change that you want to be, really, which is sort of a kind of a preachy way of putting it, but we talk about making things more inclusive and diverse in the TTRPG space. And in order to do that, we need to fucking start doing that and set an example. And not be afraid of making mistakes. He says, knowing damn well that he's going to go away and edit all this video together, frightful of making mistakes in the fucking editing process. Just try, explore, and if you're with a nice group of people, they're going to be incredibly understanding about all this and help you along the way, providing that it's clear that you're trying and not to being a dick with it, Which is, that bit of context is super important, so go on, my dear viewers, have fun and explore some of these more mature and troublesome aspects to enhance your role-playing experiences and making your character's struggles more believable, more fun, and more engaging. And I would love to hear all your thoughts and opinions about this in the comments below. And check out the books in the description as well, purchase them with those specific links, and I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on Drive for RPG. And that can go to help supporting the channel, creating awesome content for you and running games for you. So really, it's a win-win chicken dinner situation for you because you get books and I get books, but you also get content for free. Now, if you've got the books down there and want to get something else to support me financially, you can copy and paste the magical affiliate code in the URL of any Drive-Thru-RPG purchase before you add it to the cart, and that helps as well. But if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. I know times are hard and all of that. But it would be cool if you can. But as I said, if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine as well. What you should definitely do regardless is give the video a cheeky little like, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.